Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the News Behind the News with Ralph Kintav on Mix 94.7 FM, and thank you for joining me on today's program. Well, you know that this weekend has been quite a weekend full of activities, and before signing off last week, one of the things that was mentioned on air that is although Parliament is on recess, journalism isn't. And so to begin this new month that we are also in, the month of July, with a series of, continuous in-depth conversations on the program, I have here with me the Ombudsman and her Secretary General. Good afternoon, folks. How are you doing? And thanks for being on the program.
Good afternoon, Ralph. Thank you so much for having us.
And good afternoon, Ralph, the radio listeners. And again, thanks you for having us.
Okay, perfect. So it's good to have you because, of course, the Ombudsman has been in the news, particularly as it relates to the systemic investigation regarding the tendering and awarding process of the solid waste collection of 2021 to 2026. Before I get into that, I think it's always important sometimes to do some repetition because sometimes people, for example, forget the role of certain, councils of state, etc. And while the Ombudsman, for years has been has heavily marketed itself, I would say. I think it's necessary if you guys can just reiterate, what is the role of the Ombudsman before we get into the report.
Okay, yes, that is always important. You always have a lot of persons that maybe don't understand the task, and it's always good to reiterate. Thank you for that opportunity. The task of the Ombudsman voices the Ombudsman is the voice of the people. The Ombudsman assists Parliament in its supervisory role. Together with other high councils, you have the Council of Advice and the General Audit Chamber. They are also a high council of state. Each one of us assists Parliament in their supervisory role. The role of the Ombudsman is to investigate the conduct of government in its relation with the public. The Ombudsman investigates propriety. Was propriety applied? And she does it based on standards of proper conduct. And this goes beyond the law. The Ombudsman also has a unique role, and that is the role regarding the Constitution, that the Ombudsman is the only institution that can submit laws, newly ratified laws, to the Constitutional Court for review, whether or not this is in contravention with our Constitution. Mm-hmm. And that is also an important role, and we have seen the Ombudsman in action. We submitted those three very important laws, regarding the cost-cutting
measures,
the measures that were taken.
Yes.
The Ombudsman can investigate based on complaints filed, but the Ombudsman also has the possibility to do an own motion investigation. We call that a systemic investigation. That is when either a complaint is filed or either the Ombudsman is acting on concerns within the public, mm-hmm. and hearing of different things that are in contravention to the proper standards. The Ombudsman has that right based on the ordinance of the Ombudsman to do an own motion investigation.
Okay, thank you for that elucidation. And now, as it regards our systemic investigation, how exactly is that carried out? And at what point does the Ombudsman reach to the stage where, besides maybe having correspondence with a minister, with government, etc., at what point does the Ombudsman launch a systemic investigation, and how is it carried out?
Well, usually a systemic investigation is broader than a regular complaint. A regular complaint will only focus on the complaint of the complainant and focus on their grievances that they have. But when we see that this grievance goes further than just that complainant, where it is in the interest of the public to further research or investigate that complaint, that it covers other aspects, other policies that need to be investigated, then the Ombudsman would decide to do an in-depth investigation based on own motion, and then we would take it broader than just what the complainant requested.
Okay. So, as it regards to the tendering process of the solid waste collection, what about the complaints were alarming, from the persons who, participated in the bid or the tendering process?
Okay, first, as the Ombudsman indicated, it started off with 2 individual complaints from 2 separate contractors that questioned the transparency, the integrity of the entire process. Mm-hmm. So we started off the investigation. Before we decide to investigate, first we need to review what your concerns are, what your grievances are. So based on the information we received from the contractors, we posed a number of questions to the Ministry of Roaming. In addition to that, while we did not receive complaints from 2 separate contractors, we also received their letters, because via their legal representatives, they did indicate to government they had serious concerns with the process. And we even met with one of those contractors that did not formally file a complaint with us.
Okay.
So we communicated to the minister before we started the investigation, and the minister subsequently responded to our questions. And in that initial response, one of the documents we requested is a complete, because as you may be aware, 24 companies applied for, I believe it's 24 companies applied for the tender. Mm-hmm. So in our questions to the minister, we requested all of the tender documents from those 24 companies. We also requested the tender awarding advice and other internal documents from the process. And in his initial response, the ministry responded, those documents are confidential, they're sensitive, and, they don't want to provide them, but they're willing for us to come and sit and review them at their office.
So just a minute there. Okay, so I do remember in the press briefing when the minister stated that, because in his response he said that, he made all documents available, and he stated that some information were in boxes, and because of the type of information it was, the minister preferred that you guys came in. So that is what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly. So in his initial response, the minister indicated that he prefers not to provide information. But when he contacted the Ombudsman and informed that, the Ombudsman insisted, no, we need to review all the documents, because right now we are not investigating. We are doing a review to determine if we need to investigate. And she specifically requested all of the documents. And initially, some back and forth ensued after that. We wrote emails. All of this is properly documented. It's not included in the report per se, but those are the background information of our investigation. There was numerous emails back and forth, and ultimately, we did receive the documents that we requested. And let me just say before, the Ombudsman conducts an investigation, and we have a procedure. And when you see the amount of documents that were provided, it doesn't make sense to look at those documents in an office where people are restricted for time, etc. We need to, at our leisure, review all documents before we proceed. Mm-hmm. So that was the process initially, and again, ultimately, some of the documents were provided, again, not all, but we only realized some documents were missing after we reviewed the documents, and then the Ombudsman decided we will start a systemic investigation. We provided the ministry with the information. We invited all of the evaluation committee members for a hearing, including the minister, the secretary general, the department head.
Did you get full compliance or support,
Yes.
I would say.
Yes, in the sense, while we did indicate that in the report, there was some back and forth with whether they were invited or not, but ultimately, that information is important, but ultimately everyone showed up. So that's ultimately the objective. So they showed up. We had extensive meetings with all of the committee members. Meetings, the hearings were in excess. While we scheduled, for example, an hour to meet with the members, some of the meetings were drawn out for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. So we got a lot of information from those committee members. And during one of the hearings, one of the committee members were attempted to, based on the discussion we were having, the committee member attempted to use the documents that we had to explain a situation, which is what we refer to in the report as a completeness of tender forms. Mm-hmm. So she said, okay, we had a completeness of tender forms. And so we provided the documents that he had. And she said, the committee member, which one it was, and it was multiple, said, oh, this document is not there. It's not here. It's not included in the file. So this is not what we are saying. This is what the committee members told us. Yeah. That these documents that is the first step. So before the committee starts to work, they go through, there's a form, and they confirm that the tenderers have all of the information that are required in the tender. So that is the first step, and that is checked off and signed. Mm-hmm. Those documents are not there. This is a verifiable fact. The ministry could debate whether they agree with our recommendations. This is not a debate. Mm-hmm. It is a fact. This is verifiable. Yeah. So that information was not provided. The Ombudsman requested it on multiple occasions via email, and the minister or the ministry did not provide that information. Again, that is a verifiable fact. This is not an issue that you could debate. You could choose to debate it, but the evidence is there. It is a fact. These documents exist, and they are not in the files that we currently have.
Okay. I just want to then, before going into several points of the report that pretty much stand out, is go ahead and read an excerpt from the response of the minister to the Ombudsman, and that was also shared with the public, because the minister basically asserts that he provided all the documentation and believes that in essence the report is partial or untrue. So in his response, he stated that the ministry has taken note that your preliminary findings report does not include mention or comment on the many, in brackets, additional documentation, including internal communication that the ministry has provided from the onset of your investigation. The ministry also sent an additional letter of concerns, which was also signed by the Acting Secretary General and the Acting Department Head of Infrastructure Management, which were also not followed up by your office, nor does it appear to have been included in the drafting of the preliminary findings report. This is unfortunate, as the ministry feels that said information could have contributed to a more balanced preliminary finding report. So, given that contribution, what is your take on that conclusion of the minister?
Well, again, the minister does not indicate what is unbalanced or what is untrue. The report is 35 pages. The minister's letter is basically 2 alineas when you exclude the opening and the closing. We produce a 35-page report, and the minister's response is 2 alineas, which he indicates is unbalanced, or what are terms he used, unbalanced or untrue, but did not indicate what is unbalanced or untrue. Again, all of the information that was provided, we reviewed, and once we considered relevant for our investigation, it is included. And of course, the minister provided, as he said, additional information, because of course during the hearings he read from documents and he said, okay, we don't have those documents, can you provide them? He did provide them. But again, to say that he fully cooperated, that is not a truthful statement. Again, the documents that were not provided, you could the fact that you provide a multitude of documents, that does not mean you're completed with what is accountable or what is transparent. While if we requested specific documentation, and that documentation you neglect to provide, then you're not being transparent. Because again, this is not an issue that you could debate. It's clear that those documents have not been provided.
Yeah.
I would also like to add that it should be clear that the Ombudsman, as the Secretary General said, has her own procedure, her own process, and the Ombudsman is the one that decides how the investigation is conducted. And if the Ombudsman decides to do a hearing, if the Ombudsman need more information, if the Ombudsman decides, no, I need a complete documents to be able to do my investigation, then that is how it has to be. If you say, hey, it is sensitive information, we will deal with it sensitively as well. But in order for the Ombudsman to do her due diligence, I need the information. Mm-hmm. And it has to go according to my process, the process of the Ombudsman. The minister mentioned and stated that questions that we posed and information that we requested post-awarding, he decide that these questions are outside of the scope of the investigation.
So the minister is basically dictating what the Ombudsman office role is.
The Ombudsman decides what she is investigating, and if anything is outside of the scope, that is to my discretion. However, it is not outside of the scope because it's a part of the whole process. Post-awarding is also mentioned in the TOR, which is point 10, as this point 10 of the TOR. No, that's the document. I think it's 14, chapter 14, where they have all the the requirements of post-awarding, what the contractors need to have, how they need to follow up on their work that they are carrying out. And it is the ministry that needs to follow up to see whether or not they are following procedures, if they are in default or not. And we requested if there were notices of default, for them to provide those. And those are post-awarding questions. Now, we had about 5 or 6 questions about post-awarding, mm-hmm. where the minister has stated that it falls outside of the scope of the investigation. So I cannot say that you have totally cooperated with the investigation if you have not provided that information. And we have requested it on several occasions.
But from a legal basis, can the minister do that? And yeah.
Based on the law, the minister have to provide the information. That's Article 19 of the Ordinance of the Ombudsman. The minister have to cooperate. The minister have to provide the information. The minister has to come to the hearing. That is based on the law.
Okay.
Let me add one more thing regarding the minister's comments, where he also indicated that the Ombudsman refused to allow him to record.
Yeah, okay, that was my next question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before, we had 9 hearings. Before each hearing start, the Ombudsman elaborated what the objective was of the investigation, what the objective was of the hearing.
Yeah.
She also, in the introduction, explained that it will be recorded. The purpose of the recording, which is to provide accuracy. I mean, if you're going to sit down and talk to a person for an extent of an hour, you don't want to make necessarily notes. You want to have a fully engaged conversation. So the purpose of the recording is for accuracy of making the minutes or the synopsis of the hearing. That is the sole purpose of the hearings. And of course, if the Ombudsman is conducting an investigation, it is not benefit the integrity of the investigation if everybody could make recordings and you don't know where these recordings will end up. Again, it affects the ultimate integrity of the investigation. So The Ombudsman clearly indicated that, hey, we are recording. The Ombudsman office is the only one allowed to record.
And I'm guessing it's not the first time as well?
No, that is standard procedure.
Yeah.
And no one objected. No one objected for none of the hearings. No one objected to this. Subsequently, the summary of the minutes of the meeting were provided to the minister and the other members of the evaluation committee. And again, the minister objected in one of his responses that he would like to receive copies of the recordings, to which the Ombudsman said, no, again, for the integrity of the investigation, she cannot do that. But all persons who are interested can visit the office at their leisure, indicate to the office what time they want to visit. In a private room, they'll be able to listen to their recording. So that opportunity...
Did anyone take
No,
not even the minister?
No, exactly. No one did. And that was specifically, the minister was informed of that possibility, and he did not take advantage of it.
I don't know if I'm I'm going ahead of
That's
things.
okay, go ahead.
But to stick with the same hearings, the minister also mentioned in his response that the National Ombudsman has a report out where it is stated that you have to give allow the person to record as well. I would like to highlight that. And I would like to say that the minister was informed of this earlier. So I was surprised to see that he still brought it up, because we explained the minister that report is a report that is written for government regarding their relationship with the public, how they should conduct with the public. That report is not for the ombudsman in relating to an investigation of the government. So it is totally out of context. That is one. Two, rules and reports of the ombudsman in the Netherlands, or the law of the Netherlands, is not applicable to the ombudsman. The ombudsman has her own procedures and her own law. And this was made abundantly clear in writing to the minister. And, so to come and state it again while you know that it is not applicable.
To similar to, yeah.
And let me just add one more thing to that. And if he wants to quote the report says, yes, recording should be provided unless there are reasons that it is not feasible. And then you need to provide the person with an alternative. And again, as the Ombudsman explained, it is not feasible. It's not good for the integrity for our investigation. And we provided an alternative that the ministry did not make use of.
Okay, because another thing I want to question is what the minister said basically at the press briefing last week, where basically the staff felt like they were being interrogated, something they're not used to. So it was brought across like, the ombudsman is maybe a CIA, FBI, type of approach in interrogation. So can you provide clarity on that? And because as far as the general overview of a systemic investigation, because I'm pretty sure there'll be others and relating to other ministries as well.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that the minister felt that way. That is absolutely not the idea of the hearing. A hearing is to provide the minister the opportunity to provide clarity regarding a certain topic. That is what a hearing is for. So that is the time that the minister can come and express himself, answer any questions that we have. So if the minister felt interrogated, that is unfortunate. We did not have that same experience with the members of the evaluation committee, the staff then, because we even went way over time with them, because it was just, they were sharing information, giving insight in how the procedure is, how it works. So if that is, I don't believe that the minister is speaking. I think that it is maybe his own experience And as I said, that is unfortunate that he felt that way.
Okay. So one of my next questions for you on that then is, what details did the committee members who distanced themselves provide to the Ombudsman, and were the cabinet staff of the ministry cooperative? So, well, let me rephrase that a bit. Because the report highlighted that that there were committee members who distanced themselves due to their sentiments that the process of the tender was being compromised, basically. So what about that can you share that led to them distancing themselves, and were the cabinet staff of the ministry which were involved, and as the report highlighted, should not have been involved, were they cooperative as well?
If in a sense, if they were cooperative during the hearings. Again, let me, as the Ombudsman explained, the majority of the evaluation committee, so those persons working for the Ministry of Environment, the infrastructure department, were extremely cooperative. I mean, as we explained earlier, we initially scheduled an hour for hearings. Some of the hearings exceeded an hour and a half. The members were extremely cooperative, and that is, the information can be read in the report. That is why the report is so extensive, because the committee members were extremely cooperative and shared their experiences during the entire process. A lot of the information that is in the report can be divulged from documents. It is persons expressing themselves. So the members of the committee, so the staff of the infrastructure department, were extremely cooperative. The staff of the minister's cabinet, they also showed up to the meeting, and they also shared their information. But they were less, I wouldn't say they were not cooperative, but they were less free in sharing the information. Let me put it that way. But they showed up, they remained for the time that they were allotted to be there for, and they answered the questions that were posed to them. Maybe not in as much detail as we would have liked, but they answered.
And how long did it take to come to the finalization of the report?
Well, we conducted the hearings. We started in October. We received I believe the file from the minister in June or July. After reviewing the documents, so all of the tender documents, the awarding advice, etc., we started the hearings in October. We provided the ministry with the synopsis of the hearings, I believe, in January, I believe. Can't exactly remember the date. And we completed the preliminary findings of the report that was provided to the minister in April, on April 11, I believe. And just to add, the difference between the preliminary findings and the final report are minimal. Because based on the responses, the response of the minister, which you also could read in the report, we went back and some of the statements we made, we looked at it again, we looked at documents that was provided to say, hey, did we miss anything? Can we include anything? Based on his response, certain minor amendments were made based on the responses, or additions made just to increase the clarity. But there's not much changes in terms of the report between the preliminary findings and the final report.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the News Behind the News with Rav Kintav on Mix 94.7 FM. Thank you for joining me on today's program, as I'm joined here with the Ombudsman and her Secretary General on our conversation about the systemic investigation regarding the tendering and awarding process of the solid waste collection 2021 to 2026. Now, I would like to... Now, again, the report's 35 pages, but it's not, a simple 35-page read because there are elements of it that are pretty technical and some things that require rereading as well. But I would like to start off with a gist from the Ombudsman as far as, the bottom line in what are the main discrepancies of the bidding process. I know it mentioned, for example, it mentioned, for example, like lack of definitions or adjustments in probably terms of reference, and the business license had to be provided. So what were the main discrepancies, of that bidding process?
Well, just to respond to, we acknowledge that it can be read a little technical, especially Chapter 2, where we discuss the terms of reference. Again, it's kind of technical. We acknowledge that. We try to simplify it as much as possible, but certain things, you can't. If it's technical, it remains technical. So we do acknowledge that. But I think, and at least in our opinion, I believe the rest of the report, starting with evaluation moving forward, it is quite understandable. But we do acknowledge the initial chapters when we discuss the legal basis and the terms of reference, it can read a little technical.
And therefore we chose to do an animation,
yes,
to complement
to
complement the report, to give a better vision or understanding, when you look at it and you listen, that you understand it a little better. So we had hoped that would help.
Yeah. And then perhaps that could be something that even other councils, organizations can even use, share, which is a good communication tool, basically.
Yes, and of course it is kind of technical, but I do really want to ask the public, as well as Parliament, of course, to really read the report fully.
Yes, because there were some MPs who expressed that they didn't read the report. Yes, indeed.
Read the report, read it fully, and then I would like to, state the Ombudsman has done her job. We did the investigation. This is the result. We have the report. We even complemented it. And it is now up to Parliament to handle and take further measures regarding this report. I would like to state that there were many reports that have been written. The Ombudsman is doing her duty, her due diligence, and will keep doing it. However, if Parliament doesn't hold the ministers accountable, then it is all in vain. Yes? Because we assist, as I said, Parliament in their role in holding the ministers
Checks
accountable.
And
And the minute that those checks and balances are removed or are not adhered to, then we do have a problem within our democratic system, because we have chosen that system. And if Parliament doesn't follow up, or there is no accountability, then what does that say about our system? And the Ombudsman is there, the General Audit Chamber, you have the Council of Advice. There are many reports that we have written. And if due diligence is done, follow-up is given to our recommendations, which are sound. Our reports are sound. They are thorough. They are backed up with facts. If they would act on that, I think we would have been a lot further. We probably might not even be here discussing reforms and the coho and all of that, because you have already taken so many action to make sure that we have good governance. And so I really admonish the public, Parliament, read the report and do your due diligence and to make our democratic system work. The people come to the Ombudsman expresses their concerns through the investigation, and it is Parliament that represent the people who's supposed to take the necessary actions. They do their due diligence and they take the actions. If Parliament doesn't do it, then it is up to the public to decide, if they would allow these people to represent our Parliament. They are the one that that choose their representatives, and it's up to them to see, hey,
Yeah.
I would like other representation.
But you asked a question about the main discrepancies.
yeah.
So, number one, as we explained, the terms of reference had many subjects that were not properly defined that resulted in a lot of back and forth, a lot of unnecessary discussions. So that's one thing. The terms of reference. When we talk about the one parcel per family, where it was in the thought, and then it ultimately they took it out because it was too subjective, which we agreed to in our report. So that is one of the things. One of the other things we highlighted was the bank letter, and how, again, those are standard things. You need to submit your documents in triplicate, as we outlined in the report. From one or more contractors, they did not provide a document triplicate. That was confirmed by a majority, by the committee members. Unfortunately, we could not confirm it in the report because that document that we requested on multiple occasions was not provided. But during the hearings, the committee members, that is explained in detail in the report, specifically said that was not the case. That is another aspect. So those are like some of the pricing also, that it was also extensively discussed in Parliament, that while the pricing component was not part of the task of the committee, but the way how the points were divided, you could have received 100 points for your parcel, but 40% of that was for pricing. 40% was for pricing. So what we, and the report confirms this as well, you as Ralph, who have no experience in collection of waste,
Correct.
could present a shoddy document while you say you have your business license and allegedly you do waste management, but maybe you established a company a year ago. You don't even have a garbage truck. But you provide a shoddy document in terms of the waste collection, the scheduling, and the fact that you guessed the right price would be selected. So those are things, and again, these are verifiable things. These are things that are clearly explained in the report. So those are different things that we highlighted, that we saw that did not contribute to the fairness of the process.
Yes. Okay. I'm here going through some of the questions I have, because what you just explained basically refer to, I forget which page in the report, but nevertheless, it referenced the case where you had several known garbage contractors who, had an issue because, well, with one, they were disqualified, although they were placed back in. You had an issue where, although they have an extensive track record of actually collecting garbage and so forth, the tender process, as you explained, basically overlooked. You could say whether, you can't say whether purposely or not. You weren't the person who did it, but purposely overlooked actual quality and ability to collect waste, which was, and I guess going back to some of the documents you requested, was clearly seen throughout different communities, because it was a matter of social media. I know, we talk about fake news, etc., but it was clear throughout social media as it regards to garbage companies, who use shoddy trucks, like poor quality trucks you saw picking up garbage, actually still are, which is a matter of contention in a general sense, because, you have a member of parliament who basically said, well, for him, because his garbage is personally picked up well, he has no issue with what took place. But again, that goes back to actually reading the document. So, I guess if you could also share that other element, where, finalization of making the tender process sound, what exactly was done, or what are the recommendations of the Ombudsman, rather? Because again, you had persons who had that experience, who actually have trucks and so forth, but then you notice where price was given more weight than quality.
And just to reference that particular contract, again, we are not here to represent anyone.
Yes, of course.
This is the report. these are our findings. But that particular contractor, as you said, has an extensive track record, was participated in past tenders. When you also look, which is also detailed in the report, the points that that particular contractor received for the work that was produced, their tender was the highest amongst all bidders. So when that contractor work was of high quality, and that contractor was disqualified because their business license did not include that they collected garbage. And mind you, while they participated in previous tenders and has an extensive track record. So again, those are one of the alarming things that, it jumps off the paper when you read it, and it does not add up. And again, which we highlighted clearly in the report.
Yeah, I'll just turn towards the mic a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. So another question I have for you then was because, with the time we have, we definitely won't be able to delve into every single thing in the report. But one of the things that did stand out as well, which leads to the question of, was any answers provided regarding the minutes of the tender process, which weren't provided on time and did not properly reflect what was actually discussed? Because I'm curious about in what way were the additional information added to the minutes, since it seems like it was conflated, meaning the additional information and actual minutes of the meeting, which were submitted late to the contractors.
Oh, can you repeat?
So the persons who bid in the tender process, they did not receive the minutes of the meeting in a timely manner. So my question is, was there any answers provided for that? What was the reasoning for that? Because
I believe that what we understood, this was happening during COVID. And I think even some of the meetings were done online, members of staff not being at the office, and I think that complicated matters somewhat, that certain timelines were exceeded somewhat. From my recollection, those was some of the challenges, issues with staff, COVID related, yeah. But from what I recall, those were the reasons that perhaps some of the minutes were somewhat delayed, etc.
Okay. Now, back to the report, a part I just want to read out, a little excerpt here. It says that considering that the tour mentions a minimum of 3 members, it is not clear why in a present tender 7 persons were required. Some committee members also indicated that they found the committee unusually large compared to previous tenders, which did not necessarily expedite the work. Some committee members also indicated that the minister was intensely involved with the entire process. So my question is, to what extent should a minister be involved in the tender process? And did the additional members from the cabinet offset the legitimacy of the bid?
When we say the minister was intensely involved, those are not our words. Again, those are words from the majority of the committee. We are not giving an opinion whether that is a good or a bad thing, because it could be a good thing. But we are just documenting what was expressed to us and comparing to how it was done in the past. So we are not giving an opinion on whether that is a good or bad thing, whether the minister was intensely involved.
Okay, I got you, because I was curious on to what extent should a minister be involved. I guess, is that something clearly defined in
it's
policy?
Not. It's not. Yeah. And again, we are not arguing whether that is a good or bad thing. I believe for a minister who's this was his first tender, in principle, intensely involved, should not be a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? So again, we are not saying it was a good or a bad thing. We are saying what the experience was of the staff members and how they experienced the whole process, and perhaps not facilitated the expediency of the process, because in that regard.
Okay. You want to add some members, because what I was going to ask as well is I did realize that you mentioned that a good step that was taken was the procurement process policy, which was finally initiated or put in place.
As we mentioned, it's a modest start.
Yeah. Modest, yeah.
Modest. there is, based on our report, I would, advise the minister to go thoroughly through the TOR and really have a comprehensive policy. I think that was also one of our recommendations that we gave to the minister. But what I wanted to say about the intensely involved, I think that according to them, that was not usual that they would have cabinet members there. And what they expressed is that whenever there was a bottleneck or an issue, that it would be ultimately back to the minister, which is a good thing, that the minister is, you have to make a decision how to proceed. But it should be in accordance to proper standards, or in a proper manner that it is done. It should not be in a manner where you deviate from the regulations or the rules or the way that things have always been conducted. And we have one of the internal finance report where there was an issue with, like he stated, like the Secretary General said, with the business license, where it then became a meeting, and then they would discuss as to how the way forward, and they went to analyze the words that should be in the business license that would be accepted, those type of things that they would have discussions on. And once you stick to procedures, then I think that it's fine, it's okay. You should not deviate from the way that you originally also always do your procedures. Ultimately, indeed, the minister is the one that is responsible. There were also questions that we asked concerning the pricing in one occasion, where it was stated that one contractor received the contract based on that they had the highest points, but that was not the case. And this was communicated back to the minister, and the minister said, based on the explanation from the head of the department, he agreed to it. But if you look at it, in the end, that is not was
in accordance with the terms of reference.
Yeah.
And what Ombudsman is referring to, just to clear it up a little bit, one of the parcels, one of the arguments government used in awarding a particular parcel was that the price is not a determining factor, but overall quality of work. And what happened in this particular parcel, the contractor that ultimately had the most points for that parcel ultimately did not win it, because the price that they proposed exceeded government's budget by, I believe, in excess of over $1 million guilders. And so what they did, and again, that process, which we also highlighted in the report, they decided not to award the contractor that had the highest points, but because their price was too high, but they went to this contractor who finished second. And again, that is not detailed in the TOR. And I believe even when that, so those things are things that are not consistent, that we are pointing out. That if you say, you need to be consistent. You can't in 1 minute say, hey, the price is not good, it's too low, and in another minute award a contractor a parcel while his price is too low, but because in this particular case, the other contractor's price is too high. So it's like, okay, what you're doing, it's not consistent.
Okay. So with that, it leads to, and not this point I'm making is not necessarily for the Ombudsman, but it leads to questioning, just in a general sense, ethical bounds. And the reason I'm saying this is because one of the common things you're hearing, which is understood because the reality is St. Maarten has had many governments. So the Vromi staff themselves have had many bosses, and leave it at that. But What you have though is that you're hearing where, for example, the minister will say, yeah, well, because certain things weren't done in the past, he's making adjustments and amendments, which is expected, again, because certain things which should have just been in place, like a procurement policy, basically since we became a country, should have just been there, but it's not. But where you realize the challenge is that the amendments though still seem to fall short of proper procedure. So it's like you're changing. So changes are being made to something which in existence is already not that well solidified or strong. But the additional changes it actually adds pressure that can crumble the structure. If you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's mostly for the public to think about. But my next question to you is, as far as accountability is concerned, because now that the minister is met with the conclusion, what possibilities does an ombudsman have in that to uphold accountability? So is it that, like, for example, are your suggestions binding? And another thing I'm curious about is, can this report lead to the government of St. Maarten actually being taken to court?
So the ombudsman issues her report and she issues recommendations in her report. That is all that the ombudsman can do. Okay. Issue recommendations. The minister have to state whether or not he is in agreement with the recommendations and whether or not he's going to follow up. If he doesn't agree with them and doesn't want to follow up, he has to specifically give this an explanation as to why he is not going to follow this up. Parliament is the one that they have to deal with accountability. I cannot tell them how they have to do that, but they have to focus on the facts and the findings in the report. The recommendations are for the minister to execute. However, Parliament has to look at the full report, the facts and the findings, whether or not the minister has acted proper in this situation. With the public prosecutor, that is not something for me. That is, up to the public prosecutor. The report is there for everyone to read, and it is up to Parliament and it's to decide what they will do. It is thorough. It is backed up with the documents that we have received and facts. And a
side question there: would it be too late for the ombudsman to receive the critical? So let's say the minister decides, those critical documents which was still not sent after months. Would it be too late for him to send it?
Well, the report is already there. He can send it, but we already have it. It's already finalized.
Yeah, okay.
It's already finalized. And I do want to add that these documents that were not provided are essential. They are integral. Why do I say that? This is the document as with the completeness form. It's a completeness form document. On that document is the first round where you will state whether a company has all the documents that are required. If you do not have one document, you are disqualified automatically. And that is why that is so important. So that has not been provided.
You also asked about taking to court, and Ombudsman mentioned about a prosecutor, but there's also the civil aspect of it, which a member of Parliament also alluded to. So, of course, if you are contractor that participated and based on your report, or even previous complaints that you submitted, as I mentioned, 4 contractors had issues with it. Of course, this provides a further basis that you can take the matter to court, of course.
Okay. So, because of time, I just have one more question for you. This actually goes back to, you slightly mentioned it, the issue of the bank statement, because the report mentions that it led to a debate on 2 of the garbage companies, the companies. So to the point where one company's document was missing and mysteriously appeared, and it was then stated that the entire tender of that company was overlooked. However, although being told that the department head would investigate the matter, no investigation took place and the company still won the bid. So in situations like these, what happens next?
That is
A very good question. Up, some stated that there was a document missing, and others stated that a box was missing, or that the whole bidding was overlooked. And that is something that took place because the minister as well did ask for further information on that. There is a letter, but there was no further follow up on it. It was brought to the HR department, I believe, but nothing was further investigated regarding that aspect.
and again, that goes what happens now. I mean, that's not the ombudsman call, but ultimately it lends to the conclusion of the report. It was not fair, and it was not transparent.
But the minister, in a sense, was right as far as it being incomplete, given that from the ministry's end, again, the key documents. I mean, it's complete, it's done, but the key documents were provided. So I guess to that end, it can say it was indeed incomplete because it still lacked additional.
Well, in the sense that we could not determine the transparency.
To that end,
that is what he said. That is what he said, not in terms of the fairness, but in terms of the transparency.
Yeah.
Because if we review those documents, we could have determined that is the case or that is not the case, and that's why we indicated it's not sufficiently transparent, because we cannot give an opinion on that aspect because we don't have the documents. We have it detailed what the majority of the committee members say, but that is information you could verify off of a document, and that's why we said we cannot confirm it, but from what we have heard, this is what it is, but we have not give a definitive opinion because we have not seen the document.
Okay.
So in that regard, now that it's not incomplete, that part of the report is not transparent, but we won't say that, we won't agree that it's incomplete.
Gotcha.
No, the report is complete. Everything is in the report. The fact that the minister did not provide all the information is why we can say that it was not transparent, because he did not provide the information. And based on other information, it is clear that that is an integral part, and that indeed issues arose regarding this document. So if it's not there, that means to say it's not transparent.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So
and how long should a minister or does a minister have to respond to when you present the preliminary report?
So the minister received the preliminary report. We gave 3 weeks for him to respond. The minister asked an extension of 6 weeks, and we provided him an extra 3 weeks, making it a total of 6 weeks. In the end, the minister took 8 weeks. So the minister had 8 weeks to review the document and to give a real in-depth response.
Okay.
And that response that we have received is it's not based on the content, on the findings.
Yeah.
And the minister did not fully cooperate with the ombudsman, because otherwise we would have these documents. We would not have to ask it again. It is clear in documentations, letters, emails that we have where we have asked it many times. Also regarding the hearing, it is also clear, was already informed, minister was already informed of that. So our file is, our investigation is complete. It was thorough, and it's unfortunate that we have to come to this after 8 weeks of review to state that it is not complete.
Understood.
Without saying what is not complete exactly.